You grew up believing that certain things are bad for you, not because you felt it in your body, not because someone tried it, but because someone said so and repeated it, and everyone believed it. The most curious thing is that, while you avoided these habits, the real warning signs went unnoticed. The body warned silently, emitting signals, early warning signs, but the mind was too busy obeying myths. This is how silent symptoms are born, not from excess, but from misdirected fear. The truth is uncomfortable, but liberating. Many of the things you were convinced to avoid were never the problem. The problem was ignoring the real initial symptoms while fighting imaginary enemies. When you learn not to ignore the signals your body is giving you, you realize that much of the anxiety surrounding health came from poorly explained stories, scary words, and unquestioned inherited beliefs. The hidden symptoms weren't in the food, the habit, or the behavior. They were in the misinformation. In this video, you'll clearly see normal things that you've been taught to fear. And more importantly, you'll learn to separate myth from reality, noise from signal, fear from evidence. Because the symptoms you shouldn't ignore are almost never the ones everyone points out. The silent signs have always been there. The difference now is that you'll finally learn to listen to them. The myth that chewing gum stays in your stomach for 7 years. For a long time, swallowing chewing gum was treated almost like a bodily sentence. As soon as the accident happened, someone would say, "It'll stay there for 7 years." Fear spread quickly, even without any real basis, and nobody talked about real warning signs. The body, however, has always known how to deal with it. Even without digesting the gum, it sends clear bodily signals that everything is still functioning. The problem was never the gum itself, but the narrative created around it. These myths persist precisely because they exploit silent, non-existent, but convincing symptoms. The attentive mentor teaches that the digestive system has a simple rule. What doesn't need to be eliminated comes out. There's no drama, no eternal accumulation. Swallowing chewing gum once doesn't generate initial symptoms, nor hidden symptoms waiting to appear years later. A practical example helps calm the mind. Small seeds, pieces of shell, or even plastic fragments go through the same process. The body doesn't panic, it resolves. The real lesson here is not to ignore the facts in favor of fear. Many of the signals your body is giving you are ignored because someone told a scarier story. This myth reveals something bigger about human behavior. We learn to fear common things while overlooking real risks. When someone starts to pay closer attention to early warning signs, they realize that not every imagined discomfort is a concrete danger. The most dangerous silent signs are often where no one looks, not where everyone points the finger. And curiously, this pattern of exaggerated fear also appears in another domestic villain that has terrorized entire generations: microwave panic. In the 80s and 90s, the microwave entered homes surrounded by distrust, almost like a silent villain hiding in the kitchen. The mere touch of a button was enough to trigger stories about radiation, mutations, and invisible dangers. Few spoke of real warning signs. The fear came more from the imagination than from the body. Meanwhile, physical signs were non-existent, but paranoia grew as if there were silent symptoms in the air. The noise of the appliance became a threat, and the simple act of heating food seemed like an overly calculated risk. The wise mentor explains that not every scientific word means danger. Microwaves use a weak type of energy, incapable of causing cellular damage, and the body doesn't show initial symptoms from being near them. A practical example helps to break the myth. Remote controls, Wi-Fi routers, and radios use similar principles, and nobody runs out of the room because of that. When there are no hidden symptoms, insisting on fear becomes a waste of mental energy. Learning not to ignore real data is part of maturity. as is letting go of unfounded alarmism. This collective panic shows how a lack of information creates imaginary enemies. While everyone was worried about the microwave, other truly harmful habits went unnoticed, without any early warning signs being raised. The signals your body is giving you have always been clear. If there is no reaction, there is no immediate threat. The most dangerous silent signals often don't come from new appliances, but from old habits we repeat without questioning. And speaking of repeated habits, there's another everyday sound that has also gained unfair notoriety: the myth that cracking your knuckles causes arthritis. For decades, cracking your knuckles was treated as a direct path to arthritis. A simple crack in the room was enough for someone to warn, with an air of authority, that it would destroy your joints. Few people talked about real warning signs. The fear came from the repetition of the phrase, not from evidence. The body, on the other hand, remained calm, sending no signals of structural damage. The noise was more frightening than any pain, creating imaginary silent symptoms that never materialized. The experienced mentor explains that the sound comes only from gas bubbles in the joint fluid bursting, nothing more than that. There is no wear and tear, no automatic inflammation, nor any initial symptoms of disease associated with this isolated habit. A simple example helps to understand. It's like popping bubble wrap. The sound is impressive, but it doesn't cause damage to the surrounding material. If cracking your knuckles caused arthritis, doctors who use their hands all day would be overwhelmed with hidden symptoms, and that simply doesn't happen. Here, the lesson is not to ignore science in favor of repeated beliefs. This myth illustrates how we confuse social discomfort with physical danger. What was truly bothersome wasn't the risk, but the irritating sound. Meanwhile, the real early warning signs of joint problems, persistent pain, swelling, morning stiffness, often go unnoticed. The signals your body is sending you almost never come with noise. They arrive silently. And it's precisely this confusion between myth and reality that reappears in another classic warning everyone has heard in childhood. Reading in the dark causes blindness. For a long time, reading in the dark was treated as an inevitable sentence for eyesight. Simply turning on a dim lamp was enough for someone to dramatically warn, "This will ruin your eyes." Fear spread without anyone mentioning real warning signs. Visual strain was confused with permanent damage, and any fatigue was seen as a harbinger of something serious. The body did react, but in a predictable way, sending temporary signals that had nothing to do with blindness. Even so, the myth persisted, fueled by silent, misinterpreted symptoms. The attentive mentor clarifies that reading in low light strains the eyes, just as lifting weights strains the muscles. The result? Fatigue, headache, a feeling of heaviness, normal and temporary initial symptoms. After rest, everything returns to balance. There is no evidence of hidden symptoms or permanent damage caused by reading in low light. A practical example helps. If your eyes get tired, simply pause, blink more, increase the light, or change your focus for a few minutes. This is listening to the signals your body is telling you, not panicking. The mistake has always been confusing discomfort with injury. This myth teaches a bigger lesson. Not every discomfort is a warning of disaster. When someone learns not to ignore the right signs and, at the same time, not to exaggerate the wrong ones, they gain clarity. The true early warning signs of vision problems are different. Constant pain, persistent blurred vision, sudden difficulty focusing. These are the symptoms you shouldn't ignore. Interestingly, this same confusion between imaginary villain and real risk also appeared strongly when the subject turned to food, the demon of whole fat. For many years, whole fat was treated as public enemy number one. A single glass of whole milk was enough to elicit a disapproving look, as if it were a shortcut to serious problems. Few stopped to observe the real warning signs. Fear was packaged in campaigns, headlines, and incessant repetition. The body, however, reacted differently from the discourse. Many people felt more satiated, more stable, without showing immediate signs of excess in their bodies. Even so, the collective panic created silent symptoms that existed more in the mind than in physiology. The wise mentor explains that fat isn't automatically the villain, it's a tool. Whole fats help control appetite, absorb vitamins, and balance hormones. Their absence, however, can generate initial symptoms like constant hunger, blood sugar spikes, and food cravings. A practical example, replacing ultra-processed, zero-fat products with simple whole-grain versions, such as natural yogurt, butter in small quantities, or olive oil. This is learning not to ignore the hidden symptoms that arise when the body craves more than empty calories. The signals your body is giving you usually appear in the form of satiety or the lack thereof. This myth reveals how dietary decisions were guided more by fear than by listening to the body. While everyone pointed the finger at fat, other excesses went unnoticed without any early warning signs being raised. The silent signs of nutritional imbalance were ignored for years, and this tendency to blame the wrong element also appears in another classic warning that has spanned generations, now involving climate and health. Cold air causes colds. For generations, cold air was treated as an invisible health villain. Simply going out without a coat was enough to guarantee a surefire cold. Few spoke of real warning signs. The cold became a convenient scapegoat. The body does react to low temperatures, but the body's signals don't automatically indicate illness. Even so, fear spread, creating silent symptoms that confused discomfort with infection. The narrative was simple, easy to repeat, and difficult to question. The attentive mentor reminds us that colds are caused by viruses, not the weather. Cold weather by itself does not generate initial symptoms of illness. It can only facilitate contact with viruses when people spend more time in enclosed spaces. A practical example helps to clarify. Someone can spend hours in the cold and not get sick if there is no viral exposure. However, in closed and poorly ventilated places, the risk increases. Learning not to ignore this difference changes everything. The signals your body is giving you point to immunity, sleep, diet, and hygiene, not to the external temperature. This myth illustrates how we confuse cause with coincidence. The cold weather was present when the illness appeared, so it took the blame. Meanwhile, the true early warning signs, extreme fatigue, continuous stress, poor diet, were ignored. These hidden symptoms weaken the body long before any sneeze appears. The silent signs of imbalance appear first, but almost no one pays attention. And this same distorted logic was also applied to something that many people still avoid on the supermarket shelf today. Frozen vegetables are less nutritious. For a long time, the frozen food aisle at the supermarket was treated as forbidden territory by those who wanted to eat well. The idea was created that only fresh food is good, while frozen food was an impoverished version. Few stopped to observe the real warning signs. Judgment came before analysis. The body, in turn, responded silently, showing that what seems inferior is not always worse. The loss of nutrients became an automatic fear, even without clear bodily signals to confirm it. Thus, more silent symptoms of misinformation arose than symptoms of poor diet. The wise mentor explains that many frozen vegetables are harvested at the peak of their nutritional value and frozen quickly, preserving vitamins and minerals. Fresh vegetables, on the other hand, spend days in transport and on shelves, gradually losing quality. The result? In many cases, frozen vegetables show fewer initial symptoms of nutritional deficiency than wilted vegetables in the refrigerator. A practical example. Having frozen broccoli, peas, or spinach ensures consistency in your diet, avoids waste, and helps you not ignore the regularity your body needs. The signals your body is giving you often appear as stable energy and better digestion. This myth reveals how appearances can be deceiving. Texture or labeling influences more than the actual data. While frozen foods are avoided, other bad habits go unnoticed without any early warning signs being triggered. The hidden symptoms of an inconsistent diet emerge gradually, such as fatigue or low immunity. These silent signs don't point to the freezer, but to repeated choices made without reflection. And this same confusion between imaginary villain and reality also appears in something that many people consume every day, first thing in the morning. The fear of ascorbic acid, vitamin C. At some point, scientific language became the enemy of trust. As soon as people read ascorbic acid on a label, mental alarms went off, as if it was something artificial or dangerous. Few stopped to observe the real warning signs. The fear stemmed only from the complicated name. The body, however, continued to react normally because it had always recognized that substance. There were no signs of rejection from the body, nor any silent symptoms hidden there. The problem was never the acid itself, but the automatic association between chemical terms and danger. The attentive mentor explains that ascorbic acid is simply vitamin C, the same vitamin found in oranges, lemons, and acerola cherries. There is no functional difference. When the body receives vitamin C, it responds with improved immunity, cellular protection, and more efficient recovery. Its absence, however, generates initial symptoms such as fatigue, low resistance, and slow healing. A practical example, choosing foods based on their real nutritional value, not out of fear of the technical name. This is learning not to ignore the hidden symptoms of misinformation that lead to worse choices disguised as more natural. The signals your body is giving you don't speak the language of marketing. This myth reveals how fear can be manufactured with words. By demonizing scientific names, many people end up paying more for products labeled free of something that was never a villain. Meanwhile, the true early warning signs, unbalanced diets, excess ultra-processed foods, lack of nutrients, go unnoticed. The symptoms you shouldn't ignore rarely come from the label, but from your routine. The body's silent signals always point to doing the basics well, not to ill-informed panic. After all this, it's hard not to rethink how many times you were taught to fear the wrong things. While avoiding common habits, you ignored the real warning signs your body always tried to show you. The body's signals never shouted, they whispered. And that's exactly why so many silent symptoms went unnoticed for years. It wasn't a lack of warning. It was too much noise. The turning point happens when you learn not to ignore early warning signs and begin to differentiate myth from reality. When you understand that the initial symptoms that truly matter don't come from repeated stories, but from what your body feels every day. The hidden symptoms are almost never in what scared you, but rather in what distracted you from observing. The signals your body is giving you are simple, direct, and honest. The problem is when no one taught you how to listen to them. Now the question remains, how many symptoms that you shouldn't ignore are still being pushed aside in your life? How many silent signs have you only noticed now, looking at everything more clearly? If this video opened your mind, subscribe to the channel and follow the next videos. Here, the idea is to continue separating fear from truth, noise from signal, belief from awareness. And you can be sure what comes next will make you see many things in a completely different way.